Hi, welcome to Project Geospatial. I'm Adam Simmons, and on this episode of Admin Daryl View the World, welcome back, Daryl, once again for another show. And this is this segment. Our topic is transitioning R&D into operations. Daryl, take it away on our surprise guests for this episode.
Awesome, Adam. Thank you so much. Again, it's my pleasure to co-host with you on this on this podcast. And today we are really fortunate to have not one but two surprise guests. One surprise and one not so surprise. So Joe Governski, welcome, Joe. How are you?
Are you muted, Joe? Because we're having some mute issues.
So Adam, as the surprise guest, Adam Estrada from Maxar. Hey, Adam, how are you?
Doing well.
Can't hear you, Joe.
Joe, are you back? We're having problems with Joe's audio. I'm sure we'll fix that. So our surprise guest gets to be our primary guest until we get Joe's audio fixed. See, this is what happens when you surprise us, Joe. You knew this is going to happen because Adam and I we're just it's not bashful about that kind of stuff. So one of the very interesting, key, frustrating, just head-banging kinds of things that we all deal with in the technology world is how do you take a good idea and get it into the hands of people who can actually use it. I spent a few years helping try to transition things inside a government agency from concept into operations. And frankly, that whole process made me really question partly my sanity. It was partly why are we not being successful? We employed all sorts of great ideas and concepts, and we use lean methodology and lean startup processes. And okay, so how come we can't get this thing that in my particular case, analysts truly and utterly wanted? How come we can't get that into operations? How come we can't get it into the hands of the people that really need it? And there's a lot of reasons why. Partly it is function, partly it's bureaucracy, partly it's the programming cycle or the money cycle. So if something's doesn't have a budget line item attached to it, you can't get it there. But we have a couple of folks here in the form of Joe and Adam, and welcome back, Joe. Are you back with us, bud?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, man. You're like the Verizon commercial, man. Although, didn't they fire that guy? I think they did.
I think so, yeah. And actually, I'm the expert on how to mute and unmute buttons. So yeah, kind of embarrassed that I've already failed so far.
Yeah. Well, we have figured out in my own company, we have figured out that you can actually be quadruple muted on a webinar, by the way. So that's actually happened. It has. Okay. Yeah. So Joe, as a new entrepreneur, with a company called GeoYeti, you've been involved with all sorts of really cool things. And what I'd like for you to do is kind of give the audience, if you would, just an idea of what your background is and talk about the RFTs, the rapid feedback teams, and maybe some of the things that you've seen along the way. And when you're done, then you get to introduce Adam.
Awesome. All right. So I'm Joe Governski. Really been kind of in the geospatial community for close to 20 years now. It's crazy how it just creeps up on you. Seems like yesterday that I took the plunge and moved to Washington, D.C. I grew up in Augusta, Georgia, and really started off in the production side of things, which is super important. I can really tell who started in geospatial, and they're clicking buttons, hitting enter, keeping the computers going, right? You learn a lot, and you also want to learn, all right, I don't want to do this the rest of my life, right? So you start trying to figure out shortcuts, how to automate things. From there, it kind of seems that I went into what we'll say is actually, can you guys hear me? Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay. Sorry, it keeps giving me messages saying that I've been dropped. So I'll just pretend that I haven't been dropped. I got into the Intel community, and it's one of those growing up down south. I don't know how I'm going to get into this, but you get into it, and what I learned was that there's this really interesting thing that there were like little holes and little pockets that were not being filled on the, we'll call it the high side, but they were being answered on the unclassified side of things. And that's when I really got interested in like, how can we take open source ideas, which again, I think it really, once the internet really started taking off, people had access to things that you didn't know existed. So that's where I got really excited. I started running something called the GIS forum. And this is a classified IC geospatial event, is a monthly event. And what I'm doing was bringing in companies that had no experience within the IC and exposing them to these people with the top secret clearances. And people with clearances, their minds are being blown of just, man, there's really cool stuff out there, just going on in the open. And granted, this is only like maybe a decade ago, and now it seems like commonplace, but at the time it's crazy. Like we would never use something that the people don't have top secret clearances. Fast forward, we'll go to the rapid feedback teams. I think that is one of the closest things I've worked on, where you take this idea on paper, it's a great idea, other good idea, mashing it together of taking multidisciplinary teams, right, and putting one on the unclass, one on the SIPR, and one on the TS side of things. And we can go into more details as to what that looks like. But taking that and you look at how do you get to operational? And I think the real question that we should be answering here is what is considered optional? Like you can create a model and that team is doing, but if the end goal or what is considered success, all right, how do we scale this out and everybody's doing the same exact thing? We didn't make it to operational then, right? So what I'd like to say is that what we're talking about today is going through different things of what is a good idea and then what is considered operational. And I think that it's the idea of people who start off with a good idea, what does success look like?
Right. So how do you move from success forward? And I can see Adam wants to jump in. So Adam E, go for it, man.
Yeah. So you brought up open source. Does that mean open source software and, applications or open source data? What does that mean to you?
To me?
Joe, to you.
It's weird because, again, this would go back to what is operational in the sense of like different ideas of success. Like open source, it's amazing. We'll talk to some people and they're like, what I consider open source and freely publicly available. And they're like, all right, well, what is this? Can you use this in something or do you have to reference it? Like the word open source is all over the place. And I agree that there's a lot of goodness out there on the open internet. You got to be careful with what you're using. Like, is the data actually good? What is the intent of producing this data? But again, just knowing what is available out there. I guess that's what I should say is what is publicly available on the open internet.
So you're talking more data.
More data then, right? Is that what you're getting to, Joe?
I'm talking data because I come from the analyst background. So this is where I will transition over and introduce Adam Estrada here, who we were talking earlier about taking a good idea that's more like software related or machine learning and taking it from, again, seriously, just a good idea. And then it's a program of record or you have patents on it, right? So a totally different thing. But what I do think is extremely important, which Adam did with each of these projects, putting words in your mouth, but you kept analysts, the people, the end users, the operators, the analysts, in the entire process of like, is this useful? Is this not? As opposed to the sponsors or the big dog stakeholders of like, does success look like, can we sell this, right? But it's more or less how many people are going to end up using this down the road and will it be useful and change the way operations are done? So with that, I'll pass it over to Adam Estrada.
So Adam, go ahead and tell us who you are exactly and what you do, and why Joe's giving you so much credit with open source too.
Yep. Thanks, Joe and Adam and Daryl. Thanks for having me. It was a short notification, Joe, but I appreciate the opportunity to be able to come in here and chat with y'all. So my name is Adam Estrada. I've been, like Joe, in the geospatial community for, 20 plus years now. My background is really on the geospatial side, but more focused on software development, building tools that analysts use. Where Joe's really focused on doing the analysis, right? So over the last 20 years, I've worn a lot of different hats. I started my career down in Atlanta, Georgia, working for a commercial software company that a lot of remote sensing or geospatial practitioners in the DC area have worked with. A company called ERDAS off the Beaufort Highway. Yeah. Yep. ERDAS Imagine. Daryl, does that ring a bell?
Yeah. So we're going to have Lori on the show, and I'm going to like spring you on him at a future show too. Right. So yes, absolutely.
Oh, that's great. So I was from the old school where Lori and Bruce had the office on Beaufort Highway, and it was still, old Fortran code.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of dating myself now, but I guess, I'm looking in the monitor here. I got kind of a gray beard thing going. So anyway, fast forward. There you go, Joe. Fast forward a few years. I'm up here in the DC area, supporting federal government like Joe. I work for Maxar Technologies, and, we've got a breadth of capabilities, right? So we have 4 satellites on orbit. We got 6 more satellites launching next year. We're downlinking, enough data to fill in the entire country bounds of Brazil every day. We have a tremendous amount of data going into the cloud that, we develop software and applications against. And more importantly, the data is being used every day by the government and, other commercial stakeholders to solve real missions. So, it's actually like the holy grail for someone like me. I want to build tools and, allow the analysts that, Joe works with every day to be able to use those tools to analyze the data that we collect. So I'm really, really happy being here. And, the path that I've taken, is definitely an interesting one, going from commercial to, purely government services. But, at the same time, I feel like learning the commercial route of how to do things, the teams that I work with, I actually get hammered all the time because the commercial guys, they want to do software development the right way, which is, very thoughtful development and methodical and, code reviews and all that stuff. And, I just throw code review out there as the first thing that came to mind. But you pivot over to, government contracting. We got to deliver very quickly and, solve problems very quickly. And, that's where Joe comes in, and the rapid feedback teams and the rapid analytic responses, bridging the two of, very well written and, thoroughly, invested software, and then rapid software development. It's sort of the convergence of that. So, as far as IRAD goes, you have to take customer requirements. In this case, Joe and his analytic teams are the customers. So being able to apply, the thoughtful commercial type mentalities, rapidly developing and prototyping to solve those missions on a pathway to success to actually solving mission problems is it's a very exciting thing.
So so you just opened up about 4 different potential threads, Adam. So here's one, right? So you mentioned both commercial and government. So what are you working on right now that spans both? Or if that one basically proves to be a daunting discussion, can you pick one and talk about how you started out working on government stuff and how that now transitioned into commercial or vice versa?
Yeah, sure. So if you, go back in time 10 years, well, not 10 years, but almost 10 years now, there was this thing called big data, right? So we had big data sources, and we had Hadoop clusters and lots of people to run the Hadoop clusters, and we were crunching all the data, and it was awesome. These days, GPU is all the rage, right? So, we can still get a lot of the same capabilities as we were able to get with those big Hadoop clusters, really pairwise down onto, a single desktop machine or a server rack, a one-use server rack, whatever. Going from the big Hadoop clusters to the GPU processing, I'm really talking about GPU processing, I think is sort of an evolution of the processing, that's required. So, paving the way, I'll talk about Maxar specifically here, with the lessons learned that we had from whole world analytics, processing social media data as an example, getting to be able to process the Maxar daily take, which is, all the imagery acquired every day all over the world from the Maxar satellites, is just invaluable. So it's the evolution of, computer programming and actually programming languages too, right? We went from, Java developers and C++ to data scientists these days. Modern data scientist is a Python developer, right? So the barrier of entry to get into, high performance computing has actually gone down. And I'm kind of on a rant here. So I'd be interested in Joe's perspective on high performance compute in analytic cells.
Love you, buddy.
Joe, can I say Joe and I went to college together?
Yeah, we were roommates in college. So, but I know we don't want to talk about the glory days. What are we currently working on right now? I would like to go back to what is considered operational.
Okay.
Right? And it's how many analysts are using it, and are they happy with what they're using? That's how I would define success and operational. So if you were to look at let's take something that's operational, MIDB, it's huge, right? But it's about to go on this huge overhaul. Is that success? Maybe we can go around the room as to what do we think is actually success? When you have that idea where you want to create something, what do you consider success to be? I'll go over to, let's go to Adam Simmons. What do you think success is? Operational.
If you take a business point of view, it's customer satisfaction. Can the customer take what you employ, integrate it, and are they satisfied with the product and are using it effectively for their own uses? I know I've maybe oversimplified it, but
Nope.
I think it's as simple as that for me.
I think each one's gonna be a little bit different. Daryl, what are your thoughts of operational success?
Operational success in a government context, in a commercial context, very different. In a commercial context, operational success is, scratching the itch of a problem that a customer has, and or increasing their revenue or decreasing the amount of time that they've got to be able to do it. And in the government context, it's, are you improving the ability of an analyst to do their job? Can you make them do it better, faster? There is no real cheaper. It's just better and faster, really, on the government side. So, I don't want to discount money on the government side, but that really typically isn't a metric that is discussed in terms of what success criteria look like for an analyst, right? It's really about how can you automate something? Can you make something easier to do? Can you do it faster?
Before I go over to Adam, but just to piggyback off what you said, Daryl, is that I view success as the analysts are using the final product, the operators, the analysts, but they're also invested and feel like they have a say in how to improve it, right? So operational is just constantly going. Eventually, everything is.
It's ownership. Is that what you're saying? It's basically feeling that you actually have a stake in the game, that you're not just, hey, give us some feedback on this thing, but you actually have, no kidding, partial ownership of the outcome.
Right. Well, hey, hold on there. I'm going to throw a wrench in that, what you just said.
Bring it, man.
I'm going to throw a wrench in that one. So at what point does the analyst create their own walls behind new ideas coming in? Because at some point, they become their own worst enemy. I'm getting silent. So maybe I should explain a little bit.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So what I mean by this, I've been on a number of projects being technology into whether it be government or basically delivering technology to an end customer. What happens, especially with government analysts, is a lot of these products and services tend to be wrapped around the mission, and yeah, it's over for the mission, whatever the analysts say. But I think a good use case here is machine learning best practices, right? So machine learning integrating on the mission. We need to get the machine learning workflows within the analyst workflows, but all of a sudden, maybe the analysts push back and say, "Hey, I want this to do this way." But sometimes what the analyst wants in terms of I want this tool to do it is actually wrapped around their own personal individual workflows and not necessarily meets the we'll call it the overall value of the mission or the best. I think what I'm trying to say sometimes the analyst points of view don't align with the overall objectives of the mission for innovating the mission to make it more efficient. It just their individual workflows sometimes are stagnated in regards to the innovation. And that's where I don't like to necessarily get too wrapped up in analysts, and you have to sometimes take it for a grain of salt for what they want compared to what the actual mission needs want. And who is the customer? Is it the analysts? Is the individuals right above that? I don't want to say it's the the government POC who runs the contract, because there's a degree of it can be a degree of ignorance on that level too. So let me open that can of worms.
So I think
I'll jump in and say, hey, you're right. Right. So on the government side of things, that's the sponsor, right? And they should be representing what I think the end users are. Again, I'm always going to be representing the analysts, or I'm fighting for the analysts. You're right. There's a whole bunch of different stakeholders here. But no, we definitely, you got to take all these things into consideration. Now, when you look at things that are successful, and sorry, not to derail this even more, but of things.
Well, hold on. This doesn't derail it, because this is all the struggles of getting good ideas into operations.
Right. Right. So, and we're also, I think what we're assuming here is also that the person or the group of people who came up with this great idea, and then they're usually not there when it goes operational. It's handed off from individuals along the way. So the most successful projects that I've seen, there's continuity in between these different things. But then there's other parts of where the group that is building this can transition along the way, but whoever is maintaining what is the end goal, but also keeping an ear out or eye out for the end goal, because the end goal is constantly changing. So you could sit there and come up with a great IRAD project and you deliver it 5 years later and the world has changed. There is no need for that anymore, right? So it has to be constantly evolving. But I'll pass it over to Estrada, as in, how did you create yours, and like, how did you constantly evolve from the good idea? Like, how do you listen to all the noise that's out there?
Well, to Adam's point, I do agree that, not just an analyst, but, anybody could become complacent in their day-to-day job, right? And, the monotony that could potentially, be introduced to the scenarios is just a difficult thing to overcome, period. So to the original question here, how do you go as an engineer developer? The best thing in the world is to take an idea and roll it out to a group of people and just actually have them use it. That's that's the bee's knees for, most development groups. So, there's organizations out there, cells, if you will, that, work hand in hand with the engineers. So the analyst paired with the engineer, that's a very good and repeatable pattern, where the analyst says, hey guys, I'm banging on the keyboard and, my application does X, Y, and Z, but I need it to do X, Y, Z, and then A, B, and C all over again. So I'm going to turn around to my development shop and have them, bang out the application to do it, to have it do what I want it to do. What was the question, Joe?
Well, I don't remember the exact question. I'll piggyback off of all right, how do you allow the analysts to be involved, but they still got to do their day job, right? They don't have time, or they're not allowed to fail in their day-to-day job, like the frontline analyst, right? Now, I've been part of being a third phase analyst where time is not of the essence to get a product out, to understand exactly what's going on day to day, right? But I also view third phase analysis to be one of the coolest things to try to figure things out, develop tools, automate processes, stuff like that. And that's where I feel like those groups should be working with the development teams to help carry along that good idea, IRAD process going, hey, here's the new, it'd be great if we could do this. So that eventually when it is released to the masses on the first phase, second, ever phase you want to do, you go, damn, this is actually relevant. This is what we need, and start solving their problems. So the analysts can then, for the most part, we can go into exactly what analysts need. That could be our next tangent, but it's something that actually helps them do their job and do it better.
Hey, I want to answer one of the questions coming in the chat window here. When was the first date? No, when was the first time, the year, we saw machine learning automate the work of an imagery analyst? 2018. The group that I was working with was there was folks on rotation, either through JDA or some other assignment. The office was a bit thin, and an algorithm helped augment their workflow. And as the group responsible for helping to develop the algorithms, that was like the bee's knees, showing that the project itself, and we can all probably agree that AI ML is still somewhat in its infancy, right? We're not completely at self-driving cars yet, and we don't have spaceships going to Mars yet. But that's
So I got a different answer for you, right? So there's a reason that I haven't grown my beard this year, because you think yours is bad, man. I look like freaking Santa Claus when I grow mine, right? So
Daryl,
so my answer,
you wear a good.
my answer is 2003. I was actually working at Eastman Kodak at the time, and there's this little concept that I don't know, MLAI kind of took over, and it was called ATR-AFE, right? So automatic target recognition, automatic feature extraction. And we were actually doing that then. So it was quite literally a whole pile of stuff, and you chuck it in there. You have a bunch of lookup tables. It was early stages machine learning, not AI, but absolutely machine learning. We had libraries. We looked things up. We identified them, and we kicked it out over thousands and thousands of images.
Nice.
So it actually worked, and it was 2003.
So Daryl, was that, so this is a good argument to be had. Does AI ML mean deep learning? Not in 2003, it didn't.
No, it didn't. And you know what? I have yet to see some sort of functional AI out there that we use on a regular basis. Maybe somebody's got it somewhere, but what I see is just variations of machine learning and more of what I'm talking about, rather than the automated workflow of the future, right? That's that's where I've seen. I'd love to see something beyond that, but I haven't seen it.
I just said 2018, man.
Yeah, I got it, man. So it was right 2 years ago. We got something else, right? And I think that was what. So I think part of it is, our good friend Moore. It's not it didn't say Moore's suggestion. It says Moore's law, and I don't know, we would call it. But if compute power doubles every 18 months or so, or whatever, if that's really still true, I haven't even looked over the last couple of years. But assuming as it does, man. If you can think of putting that level of compute in the hands of analysts from the cycles, right? We were talking about GPUs earlier, right? And we're talking about Hadoop now, the evolution into GPUs and whatever's going to come after that, right? So I think a lot of it is, it's not because we don't have the ability to be able to have good interface with and good conversations with customers and good conversations with analysts, and at all levels of the analyst boss, the analyst boss's boss, the office chief, the check writers, right? So I'd like us to kind of shift gears a slight bit, and talk about money, because it's something that people that have worked with me know that I use the phrase on various occasions, and please do take this and spread this. Romance ain't got no chance without finance, right? And it's quite literally the central part of taking something that's a good idea, that's been vetted. Now, how do you get it into operations? Because if there isn't money actually programmed for it, or somebody at the very high level willing to take some of their discretionary funds and allocate that, or in the case of some agencies, if they've got money that's assigned to build things, taking things from operational money jars and putting them into new job jars to go build the new light shiny, that's a heavy lift for a bureaucratic organization like a government agency. So I don't know, Joe, Adam, either of you want to like bite that one off? Because that's really, in my experience, where the problem is. It's not finding a good idea. It's not finding analysts that won't engage. It's not finding analyst supervisors that won't engage. It's, okay, this is good for 100 people, but it's not good for 1,000 people, so I can't fund it.
I'll just start off quickly from the analyst perspective. I've run into that. I think scaling is the hardest thing out there, right? Like, and a lot of these IRAD projects, there was a great idea with one person or maybe a couple people, and it was built specifically for them, and it goes out to masses and it doesn't work. So I agree that, and I don't know if it did, like, I'd probably just be on a boat somewhere. When it comes down to it, like building that good idea and building the model, and I'm looking at this also from like, I think we got to take a step back. It's not just machine learning, AI stuff. It is, how do analysts work? What seamless analytic experience between the unclassed, secret, and top secret in our field. I know that that's not maybe who all your viewers are, but like, how do you take that concept? And we got to the point where we built the model, but then we didn't know how to scale it, because then you got to convince other people that, hey, what you're doing is actually good, right? And whose job is that? Is it the person who built it? Is it the sponsors? Like, whose job is it?
Yeah.
And so a lot of times where you see complete failure,
that's it.
And that is that's exactly it. It's as if in my perfect world, if I were to suggest a team that could go after something like, okay, so we're gonna go out and we're gonna go build something new. We're gonna fix problem XYZ. You pick what the problem is. It's as if you need an agent. It's as if you need quite literally a business development person as part of your team to go out and make sure that they can sell the concept at every level, especially at the level that will actually write a check and make sure the thing gets into operations.
Dale, do you rely on individuals such as business developers on the inside to do this, or because a lot of organizations or a lot of companies now are taking the approach of that's too daunting. You're sending too many individuals across too many organizations. So now you see what you're seeing right now is actually a series of marketplaces stand up that are championing these models or championing these, where analysts can just kind of go and shop around for these solutions on their own, search for them based off of what their needs are.
So I'm going to ask you the question. I'm going to flip that question. It's a great question, Adam. I mean, they're spot on. So Joe, how much time does an analyst have to go shop around for new tools and toys to go do their analysis?
Zero, not zero, but 1%. I mean, when it comes down to it, like, they can't fail at their job. They can't go do this stuff. And even if they do think something's good, they don't have. That's why I was saying maybe third phase analysis. They could be looking into the new tools, and that should be part of the process where it's like, time is not of the essence, So, no, 100%.
Yeah, no, I got you. And so for our listeners out there, we've been talking first phase, second phase, third phase. For many folks that are used to that language, it's kind of old hat. But first phase, I got to know an answer now because something's going to go kinetic real quick.
Usually within 24 to 48 hours.
Right. Second phase, I got a week or two. Third phase, I got a period of time. It may be months, it may be a year to go do actual no kidding analysis, right? So, so each one of those time windows is how the analysts in the GeoInt world work, right? They work inside of that. And it's not just the GeoInt world, it's inside the federal government writ large. If you're in the intelligence community, you're used to the first, second, third phase lingo. And so it's just a data point for those that are not used to that language.
Sorry. So can I make the analogy? So, you said BD guys. So the BD guys are very much analogous to, the services world, right? If you make the analogy of, between the services world and the commercial folks, the commercial companies do market validation, right? So the market validation can be done through a product owner, a product manager, or maybe through a BD person or sales folks who are funneling the requirements through that. But either way, some sort of validation of what's being built has to occur. Otherwise, it's for naught, and we end up, could end up wasting money, right? And we don't want to waste money. So, we can look at academia for validation. We can look at, market trends for validation. We go straight to the analyst for validation. So I think there's a fine line between, what do you start working on? So the market says that we need to do something, like something major is happening with AI augmentation. We have the D&I pushing the AIM initiatives, and there's a lot of buzz and momentum around augmenting the analyst tasks. But what does that mean exactly? Do we use deep learning? Do we use more automation, robots to help us create reports? I don't know. So I think the current state of the art with that is to leverage the analyst knowledge, go talk to Governski and his crew about what it is they need, and, wrap the product offering that way versus, I'm thinking about it now. I was going to say, try to, pinpoint something that's going to be popular in 5 years. We can look at, what's the guy's name? Jack Dorsey. He came up with Twitter, and now Twitter's wildly popular. I don't agree with, him on the news and all that recently or whatever, but who would have thought Twitter would become the phenomenal thing that it is today, right? But, Twitter guys did it. They built an application, and now they have hundreds of millions or even billions of users. So I also think that there's a little bit of risk involved going from, building a project under an R&D umbrella and trying to introduce it into the market.
Great. So let's pull on that thread just a minute, right? So when we talk about risk, right, and you hear one of my least favorite phrases in innovation is fail fast. I hate that phrase.
Yeah.
I think that is the most ridiculous phrase on the planet, frankly, because I don't want to fail fast. What I want to do is learn fast. And if I fail along the way, I've learned, right? And if I succeed along the way, I've learned, right? But it's really succeed fast and figure out what works and what doesn't work. And so you can keep working on the things that do work, and you can ignore the things that don't work, right? So can you talk a little bit about Estrada, talk a little bit about what you have learned about, this kind of fail fast or learn fast mentality. How has that actually impacted something you've worked on recently? Because I guarantee it has.
I'm actually a huge fan of fail fast.
Yeah. Well, there we go. How about learn fast? Can we just please
like
help me here, man? Because otherwise I'm going to be like all over myself. Yeah.
Does that mean I'm a glass half full kind of guy?
No, I mean, I'm great with, and Adam Simmons knows this. I love to be told that I'm wrong, and I like learning, right? So if you don't think that, the learn fast mantra is an upgrade to fail fast, tell us why.
Yeah, this is actually the first time I've heard learn fast, Daryl. So this is
well, I made it up, man.
I like it. No, this is good. I'm a learn fast kind of guy from here on out. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, Adam. This is great. I'm a learn fast guy now. I do think it's critical. So, even commercial services work, it doesn't matter. You're going to plan out your project and you're going to execute on it. So you plan out your project that may or may not have, serious, in-depth research on what you're building and what you're building it for. And, there's examples of that. That's okay, right? But if something's not working, you've got to be able to change direction, right? The roadmap can't be waterfall 100% of the time. We're going to design this thing and develop it out until it's done. By the time it's done, it could be outdated or the wrong thing to do. So, I'm a fan of Agile, and I'm a fan of, being a little bit loosey-goosey on, how things are supposed to be developed and timelines and things like that. So learning fast based on feedback, you got to develop in sprints, right? I like developing in sprints. So plan something out for 2 weeks or a month or whatever and show people, get their feedback. If it doesn't work, you got to figure out how to make it work. So I guess that's the learn fast part of it.
So Joe, help us understand. So if we talk about this learn fast concept, right? Where does the feedback loop from the analyst actually impact, and how do you actually get that level of fidelity that's needed to be able to feed Adam what he needs to build the tools?
So 100%. So you need to have unbiased feedback from all different sources. So let's look at the different silos out there just in the world, right? So if you're getting your feedback just from a geospatial analyst or the sponsor, okay, you've already limited yourself already, right? So break down the different silos of the different disciplines out there. So maybe you're getting a developer feedback, you're getting a geospatial analyst feedback, imagery analyst feedback, human geographer feedback, all source analyst feedback. Get feedback from everybody. It does not have to be this 6-month with a bunch of PhDs. You want them in there.
Yeah, thanks, dude.
Right? But you know what I want? I want the person who's the on the ground geospatial analyst. They're honest, just quick feedback. They do not have to spend a bunch of time writing it up. Really, honestly, what did you think about it? Now, also take down the different silos of the different agencies. So if this tool or data set is being produced by one agency, what do other agencies think about this, right? So you start taking down, again, the different silos. Now, take down the silos of the unclass, the secret, the TS world. What are your thoughts on this? Provide some feedback, but do it quickly, right? So if you do all these things quickly and you combine all these different things, and it's not some super detailed report, this then becomes agile software development, where you're getting feedback from a bunch of different places. Then you got to make the decision as to which ones are most relevant or valid and what direction you want to go. But I'd much rather have tons of information from a bunch of people than as opposed to the one geospatial analyst at NGA telling me exactly how. And that's where I think ultimately you end up into the world of success.
So what I'd like to be able to shift it just a little bit. We're going to talk about success again, but Adam, I'm going to start with you, and I want you to be able to figure out how to get Joe back into this, because when we're talking about success, you have to talk at some level about critical mass and what does that thing look like. I remember having a discussion with Mark Riccio years ago when the App Store was first introduced, right, inside of NGA. And the discussion was, okay, so what's more important, an app that saves one life or an app that's on 10,000 desktops? Right. So what does critical mass look like, and how do you actually say, okay, so this literally becomes a metrics issue. By what metric is critical mass, whatever that phrase means to you, how is that achieved? So that you can actually go then build something. You've got 10 things that Joe says, you know what? I'm talking to these analysts. I got 10 things that they need. And you know what? I think this is my prioritized list. At what point in time, Adam, do you say, you know what? This one looks like it has something that, it's my language, sorry, that has critical mass and should be built?
I think majority rules. So I would favor, the app that goes on 10,000 desktops.
Right. That's spoken like a true, commercial player, right? Mm-hmm. So if Admiral Sharp were sitting here as the head of NGA, right, what would he answer?
He would say one life, but I'm coming. Keep in mind, Daryl, that I'm coming at it from the the developer perspective of I want to see the tool being used by everybody, anybody, and everybody.
Right. So it becomes a numbers game ultimately is what kind of what I was getting at in the first place. So there is no wrong answer here. It's just from a commercial perspective versus a government perspective, there are different sets of criteria. So when I see people give me an eye roll when I say, you know what, I'm pretty mission focused because I still am, right? I have to remind sometimes my colleagues that are in the commercial sector and that are even in the startup world, but they don't deal with the federal government. I said, look, mission really does mean something. It really is impactful. And when you start talking about people's lives, it doesn't get much more impactful than that. So if I can find a way to be able to lessen the burden or lessen the risk that we're putting people at risk, then yeah, I'm in on that particular thing, even if I got 10 users of it versus 10,000 users. But how do we incentivize the commercial players to get involved with the business, right?
So I think not even coming from a commercial perspective, playing the numbers game, if your application is ubiquitous in the work environment that it's deployed in, you're more likely to save lives. Look at the GeoPDF, right? Everybody tracking the GeoPDF. So GeoPDF, I mean, it's kind of a cool piece of software, right? It works in Adobe Reader, which I think Adobe's actually deprecating now. But at one point in time, Adobe Reader was on more desktops than there were Windows operating systems in the world because they also supported Linux. So if that doesn't mean ubiquity, I don't know what does, right? GeoPDF was on every single desktop, literally. Like that's cool, right? So the opportunity for impact was a lot higher.
So how do we measure impact, Joe?
So I would like to say I'm super excited about both of those things. Not to be like a politician on it, but if you save one life, that's awesome, right? Let's figure out how we can translate that into saving even more lives. If I have 10,000 users, then how can I extract? We should be saving at least one life from that, right? Where I get frustrated, and I hope everyone gets frustrated with, is when I say the customer, the sponsor is checking the box like, hey, contractor did this. Everything was produced. We checked it. And then nobody uses anything. No lives are saved. And I hate to say it, but that's a majority of things that are produced out there. Like, and when I say majority, like.
So why do you think that happens though, Joe? Why do you think that happens?
Because somebody's just looking, through their telescope, like, all right, that's where we're going, and there's not continuity of who's involved, who cares about it. So from the minute that good idea started to where it would become operational, aka it's not operational, it could be out there for everyone to use and no one uses it. A bunch of people carried the torch along the way, and they weren't like, man, I will die on this sword. So that's kind of the it is what it is. And that's why, I mean, a majority of like startup companies like die, right? Like all these different things, like something starts with a good idea, and how does it become operational? So, I mean, not that we solved anything here, but you got it.
I'm going to introduce a concept to you, Joe.
As many people.
Yeah. So Joe, let me lay this concept on you. And after you answer, I really want to get both Adams' take on this. So one of the thoughts that I had, right? So, so those of us that dabble in the venture capital world, and I say, whatever that looks like to everybody, venture capitalists are an interesting crew, and they are, in many ways, the lifeblood of small tech businesses, because they, most of them got their start with VC money in some cases. Right. At the outset, what would it look like and this is hypothetical. I don't have anything in the works, but this is hypothetical. What would it look like if we were to get a set of venture capitalists together that don't know jack about the U.S. government, and we bring them in, and you, Joe, have like 5 different things that you think that they ought to fund with their own money to be able to actually go solve problems based on all of your work that you do with analysts. How do we actually run that? Or would that be a model that would be helpful for somebody like Estrada that could actually go then build that based on the feedback he might get from these venture capitalists who look at things very, very differently. And it's very much a numbers game, right?
So my quick thing, and I would go back to 100% that it should not be me. It should be the geospatial analyst, the multidisciplinary team, then also breaking it down to the different agencies, right? It should also be people who operate on the unclass, people who operate on the secret, on the TS. If I'm that rich person with the VC money, that's what I'd want to hear from everybody. I want input from all sides because I'm not trying to invest money just in people on the top secret side of things, right? Where could this good idea, how can we morph this to where it all comes together? And then we feed that over to Adam Estrada and his development team to go produce this, right? And again, I'm not trying to I'm trying to make it seem like it's simple, but I also view this as like what you're describing is the difference between like running a zoo where you got, the zebra is over here, the elephants over here, the lions, it's easy to manage, right? The minute you bring everyone together, you're talking about an animal preserve, right? And an animal preserve is way cooler. Way cooler things happen, but you might go on the safari the next day and you're like, damn, the lion just ate the zebra. What the hell just happened, right? It's way more complicated. So what I'm saying is like bringing all these people in together, that's when things get exciting, but it's harder. Right, so you need input from all these different groups.
Yeah, right. So it would be exceedingly messy. But do you think there would be value in doing that? I've always wondered that because we continue to say, "Oh, these are 2 different communities, and we can't possibly bring." Why? If you had people to come in doing just evaluation, not valuation, evaluation. I don't know. It's just something I thought about.
So I think I'll step in here, and I think there's a few factors that maybe we haven't yet discussed about some of the dynamics of, and I'm going to focus it more on the Air Force military units because that's what I know from my background. A lot of the Air Force military units have their own, for example, especially intel units have their own weapons and tactics breakouts. They design tactics, techniques, and procedures. Those are the folks who go in and help evaluate what actively goes on in mission and constantly brings in innovative ideas and annotates, documents all the new procedures, not just by incoming contractors or incoming technologies, but also from the analysts themselves as they had to come up with their own ad hoc workarounds on the floor of the mission. So they also act as these requirements gathering from the analysts themselves. And sometimes they'll host these massive forums across multiple units to bring in large amounts of analyst data to say, hey, look across the floor here and all these applications you use on mission. Let's gather your feedback here and let's figure out what's going on. I think what's unfortunate is with many of these massive forums that I've participated in, they don't actually get industry involved. It's usually internal to the government, and there is a communication gap between the government itself with these small isolated units to the actual development teams from the different contractors, as they don't really participate directly. So I think fixing the communication lines to what the government already does to annotate and record their own best practices, I think that's key there. Because I can tell you, bringing everybody together from the analyst core from the ground level, that is pure chaos. It can be useful, but it is pure chaos, and it's a mixed bag of what you might get. You get some good ideas, but you're going to get some really odd ones too.
So Adam, Estrada.
Yeah, I think you're going back to the original conversation about, research and development, right? To Adam's point, each government agency and entity has, the group that does acquisition, they have the group that does procurement, and then the groups that, take the programs in and run them, the branches and the division level. And then, you've got the support entities. So your research task that is meant to roll into those has to touch each one of those parts. And I think it's important that when you're doing, a research and development task, you have to consider the procurement process, which is what Daryl was talking about earlier, the deployment of the thing, and then the sustainability to include now, authority to operate procedures, which in themselves could be a massive undertaking, like, rolling a capability to a firewalled off network is a very difficult and expensive thing to do. So going through the ATO process is something that we don't always consider, right? So, if you have an investment firm that dumps a ton of money into a widget from a vendor that has a really good idea and a widget that they want to build, I don't think it always conveys that all of that other stuff has to happen. You have to talk to the acquisitions folks. You have to have a contract to put it on. You have to be tied to something, even if the contract is something on the GSA schedule. That's just the first part. Deploying the thing and sustaining it is a whole other part, right? So, the ATO process, that's a huge.
And on top of that, even if you get it through that entire process,
Yep.
And I've seen this before, even if it's on a contract, and this is where it kind of goes back to what Joe was saying about, applications on contract, why don't they get used? Sometimes there's no one to actually integrate these applications within we'll call it the mission training itself, because a lot of these analysts within the military especially are required to be trained and certified that it fits within the mission workflows. And if those applications aren't fit in within the training plan at all, they're just thrown to the side and say, yeah, we'll get to it when it fits the mission.
Yeah. And on top of it, we have inside the government anyhow, there's effectively an 18 to 24 month palming cycle, right? Mm-hmm. So if you want to be able to have an operations and sustainment tail to your good idea, as you build it up, you not only have to have a sponsor that wants to pay for it to be able to actually put it so it goes through the rigorous ATO process, et cetera, right? Authorization.
So I do think, Daryl, that the key stakeholders, they realize all this, which is why InQtel and AFWorks and
it's why they all exist. But then what effectively happens, and I'm not going to rant against AFWorks and InQtel, but so what effectively happens there though? Is it simply that it's somebody else's problem? We're going to let those organizations handle these very tricky things because they don't have the answers to how to ATO things. They don't have the answers how to palm them. They can give you the first pop of money and then good luck. Who's doing the next step?
It goes back to the your BD folks and program managers who are savvy in this, right? So program continuity is a big deal, right? And it's up to, if the program's successful, we all know that our programs are going to be successful, but it's up to your savvy program managers and the analysts that are using the capabilities to ensure that they make it to the next level.
But I think we also
Joe, you got some thoughts?
Sorry.
No, I was just pointing to you. It looks like you're ready to speak.
Joe, go ahead, man.
No, I was going to say, and let's just throw in there, like, what about the programs that have saved 10 lives and they haven't even gone through the ATO process yet?
Bingo.
Right? What does it say about that? I mean, and that happens. And that's a beautiful thing of where someone, maybe probably third phase analysis or whatnot, something that took some time. And that's kind of where I specialize in things. I'm not one of these 24-hour operator kind of people, but, like, there's all these outliers, right? So again, it goes back to like, what is success? And like, I agree. There's a process put in place. Standards are put in place for a reason, right? It's why something says, do not do targeting with this, right? But then somebody goes and does it anyways, and turns out it works. You're like, oh God, that was great. But geez, So But that's where I think having the diversity of the different silos that operate in the world, right? Like breaking down those silos and a group of people that kind of talk within those groups. And anyone who does analysis will sit there and say, whatever project got your most attention, like where people were like, damn, that is a really cool project. A couple things happened here. You probably worked at different agencies. You probably worked with different disciplines, right? You actually worked with a developer. You worked with a human geographer for once. You worked on the unclass, the secret, the TS. You know what? You might have brought in like academia or nonprofits or some other group, right, that no one else was doing. And that's the kind of stuff that if you want to look at like senior leadership that goes, oh, wow, that's what I like. That's success, right? You used a tool that was not built to be used that way. You use it in like non-traditional method. They go, damn, that's why we all become analysts. And that's why I support the analysts. And like when I see analysts doing really cool stuff, they've worked with other groups outside of their silo.
So in the last couple minutes, right? We're long on time, and this is, man, I could spend hours doing this. I'd like to ask in turn, Joe, then Adam, pretty simple question. If you had advice to give to small development firms, I'm not even talking about large development firms, right? And so, Adam, you're kind of in a mid to large mode, but we'll still we'll put you on the island to be able to vote here. If you say we have commercial firms that are interested in helping solve problems, what one specific nugget of advice would you leave this audience with, right? Because those people are out there.
Well, first and foremost, build something that people will use, build something that matters, right? And then find an advocate for it, right? Find somebody that'll, take it and champion it. If it's a niche thing and you're not going to see a large, user base, if it's a widget that runs behind the scenes, you need to let the users know that it's working and it's impacting mission. That's where the advocate, stakeholder comes in. So build something that counts and matters based on, a requirement that, fills a gap, and then advocacy.
Joe.
All right. My last thing, I'm just going to simplify things. Look, but there's 4 in this group here. I'm clearly the dumbest, and I'm okay with that. But I will simplify things.
No.
Sometimes your customer is going to say, you know what? I need a house and I need a garage because I need to park my car in the garage, right? And while you're building that house, that customer goes out and buys a truck that won't fit in that garage. You need to be aware of that. So you got to talk to all these different groups. So I'll leave it with that. You always got to be aware of your surroundings. You can't just start with your good idea. Your good idea needs to evolve along the process. So.
I got it. I'll just be thinking like truck, garage, got to fit the truck in the garage. Got it.
Awesome. That's all I got. But thanks for inviting us. It's been fun. Love to tell you about GeoYeti and where we're going down the road. We're a new startup, so we're feeling ourselves out, trying to explore the world, and maybe we can come back a couple years from now and tell you where ideas of
couple months, man. We recycle our guests regularly, man. It was like you're going to be back on in a couple months. Same for Adam Estrada. So Adam and Joe, thank you so much for coming on today. And we're going to keep picking on this bone because I think that the whole concept of developing for the intelligence DoD communities is actually it's one that it's not going away. That's going to continue to exist. And maybe next time we really do focus on the commercial sector and talk about, how about there's commercial things that actually might work for the government too, and vice versa. So, with that, Adam Simmons.
Yeah, no, I appreciate both of you coming on. Great having guests. And I'd also like to thank the Peanut Gallery because we've been getting some interesting chat messages through here, especially from, let's see, looks like we got some hot items. Uncle Mace, Andrea Verth, and Kevin Tracy. So interesting chat conversations and questions being brought up on the side from our viewers. So once again, thank you, Adam Estrada, Joe Governski. This is Adam Simmons with Daryl Murdoch on Adam and Daryl View the World on Project Geospatial. We hope you'll come on next time. Thanks, everyone.